Здравствуйте, welcome back to Russian Through Poems and Paintings. Today is day 133, and the topic today is predicate adverbs, right? So reviewing predicate adverbs and how to use them with the dative case, which is an old topic. And we'll also talk about short form names, short form first names in Russian. Our painting today is 1918 год в Petrograd, sometimes called the Petrogradskaya Madonna by Petrov Vodkin. We've seen some of his paintings earlier in the book. And let's read the caption. Молодая мать держит своего ребенка. So a young mother is holding her child. Этому ребенку примерно 1 год. Right, to this child, there is approximately 1 year. So we also express age using the dative. That's not really our topic today, but there is one use of the dative. Этому ребенку. Он, по-видимому, родился в году революции. He apparently was born in the year of the revolution, right, 1918. Что ждет его в жизни? What awaits him in life? Что чувствует его мать? What does his mother feel, right? How does she feel? What does she feel? Ей страшно за ребенка. Is she afraid for her child? Does she fear for her child? And there's today's topic. Yay, right, which is a dative pronoun plus this predicate adverb strashna, right, from the related to the adjective strashny meaning terrible or frightful, and we say yay strashna, right? She feels fearful, right? Frightful. She's afraid on behalf of her child. Грустно, right? Does she feel sad? А может быть, она надеется и верит, что ребенку в жизни повезет, right? Or maybe she is hopeful, she hopes, and she believes that the child will be fortunate in life, that it will be lucky. And there again is that dative with a subjectless verb that we talked about earlier, right? Повезет, the child will be lucky or fortunate. Okay, so let's review quickly this grammar. This is fairly simple, and we've certainly been over it. We introduced it first in book 1, so it's old hat, but it's some of the most useful grammar because of how often these little constructions are used to talk about how we feel, right? So in terms of just expressing those ideas, this is really important. Now remember, these are subjectless, right? So all these expressions, we're using basically an adverb plus a dative case pronoun or noun, right? So we can start out with just the adverb, like хорошо, right? Meaning things are good, there's a good feeling in the air, life is good. There are a million ways you could translate that, but note that in the Russian there's no subject, right? Now, so that's a subjectless expression. Now, if we go and make that past tense or future tense, as we know with any subjectless expression, we're getting a verb form that looks like the neuter singular, right? So было or будет. Было хорошо, будет хорошо. Okay, now if we want to attach that feeling to a subject, to a noun or a pronoun, we need it in the dative, right? We can't have nominative in a subjectless construction. So, for example, мне хорошо, мне было хорошо, мне будет хорошо. Мне is the dative of я. Okay, so here are some common predicate adverbs, right? Most of these we should know already. Хорошо, плохо, интересно, весело, не весело, right? Нормально, грустно, больно, стыдно, неловко, страшно, глупо, легко, трудно, скучно, холодно, душно, жарко, right? So all adverbial forms, all ending in an o, and we would combine those with the dative. So let's pick a few of these feelings and describe how these people might be feeling, and more than one possibility, obviously. Sergei выиграл в лотерею. He won the lottery. Okay, let's say he feels good. Ему хорошо. Ему хорошо, right? Можно еще сказать, что ему повезло, right? We could also say that he got lucky. Ему повезло, using that subjectless verb. 2. Игорь сидит в тюрьме. Okay, he's sitting in prison. Let's say that he's bored. Ему скучно, right? Or maybe he's not having a good time. Ему не весело. Ему плохо, right? Tons of things we could say. 3. У Татьяны насморк. Okay, she has a cold. Let's say she feels sad because of her cold. Ей грустно. Ей грустно. Ей не весело. Ей плохо, right? She feels badly. 4. У Владимира умерла собака. Vladimir's dog died. Okay, let's say he's sad. Ему грустно. Ему грустно. Right? So again, we're here using pronouns, right? So Sergey would be ему, Igor, ему, Tatiana, ей, feminine, Vladimir, ему. 5. Now plural, the Ivanovs have a new son, right? A son has been born to the Ivanovs. Im, let's say, I don't know what. They're having a good time. Maybe that's not a good one. Im vesela, too much work with a baby. Let's say they find life interesting. Им интересно. Им интересно. С новым ребенком. 6. Я надел разные носки, right? I put on different socks, meaning my socks don't match. I'd imagine you'd feel pretty stupid if you did that, right? Мне глупо. Мне глупо, или может быть мне... do we have that here? Неловко. I was going to say, yeah, we have that. Мне неловко, right? I feel awkward, I feel embarrassed. 7. У нас сквозняк. We have a draft, okay? So we must feel cold. Нам холодно. Нам холодно. 8. They want to open the draft window, the little window to let in fresh air. That means they feel stuffy, right? Им душно. Им душно. Okay, now expressing opinions, again, just very simple constructions like saying, well, that's interesting, that's sad, that's difficult, that's nice, that's interesting, etc., right? We also use predicate adverbs, and just a variety here of very simple expressions. Интересно, как грустно, kind of an exclamation, how sad, как грустно. Or we can throw in an это так глупо, right? That's so stupid. Это глупо, это так глупо. By the way, you see obviously that this grammar is extremely easy, but I find that it's one of those things that students just kind of forget because I guess we don't spend enough time on it because it's so easy. But these are some of the most simple little, most typical sentences you can imagine saying in Russian. Okay, so let's react to these situations and pick an example and use one of these constructions. Я смотрю, как трава растет. I'm watching grass grow. Okay, I'm going to make an exclamation and say как скучно, right? How boring, как скучно. 2. Все танцуют на столах. Everyone's dancing on the tables. Well, that sounds like a good time to me, so I'm going to say это так весело, да, это так весело, or как весело, or simply весело, right? So any number of things we could say. 3. Я скажу тебе секрет. I'll tell you a secret. Как интересно, right? How interesting. Как интересно. 4. Я уронил утюг на ногу. Я уронил утюг на ногу. Okay, I'm thinking that's pretty painful. Как больно. Как больно. Right? How painful. 5. Мою собаку переехали. My dog's been run over, right? Literally, they ran over my dog. Так грустно, так грустно. Или так скучно без собаки, right? How boring without a dog. 6. Я забыл имя своей подруги. I forgot my girlfriend's name. Okay, that's awkward. Мне неловко, right? Как неловко, right? Or stupid. Это так глупо, right? Or мне глупо, right? I feel stupid. 7. Он опять надел абажур. Okay. Oh my God, he's wearing the lampshade again. Okay, sounds like a really fun party. But he's doing this now for the second time at least, right? So I think this is getting pretty old, right? It was funny the first time he wore the lampshade on his head, but now it's just not interesting anymore. Это так глупо. Это так неинтересно. Может быть, да? Это так невесело. 8. По городу бродит медведь. There's a bear roaming about town. Okay, what can we say about that? Как интересно, так странно, right? How strange. Не знаю, что можно сказать об этом, right? I don't know what you can say about that. Obviously, you can pick any number of reactions. Okay, let's go on. Again, there are some exercises in the book where you can practice some more of these expressions, but let's look quickly at the topic of short form names. And here we see Mayakovsky в мастерской окна роста. Right, he's in the workshop of this, the Russian, whatever, the telegraph agency, basically making propaganda, right? He's painting propaganda posters. Okay, so what would his friends, what would Vladimir Mayakovsky's friends have called him? Well, probably not Vladimir, right? So if you're friends with someone, with a Russian, and you would address them as ты, then you would probably really never call them by their full name, by their full first name. Instead, you would use a shorter form, a familiar form. And for good old traditional Russian names like Vladimir, these forms are set, right? So they're not nicknames, they're not something that have been made up, at least not usually, right? They're just standard forms. Now, Vladimir happens to have two, Volodya and Vova, right? So you'll hear both. Okay, so a couple of notes on these forms. All of these short form names are feminine, right? They all end in a or ya, even names for men, right? So for example, Mikhail, the short form is Misha. The short form of Maria is Masha, right? And again, you see feminine endings everywhere. And one little note that's quite important, although not often mentioned in grammar, as I've noticed, is that if you drop the a or the ya, well, basically you're dropping the vowel at the end. You're dropping the a, and you get a kind of vocative form, right? So if you hear a Russian calling out to someone using a short form name, for example, they're calling out to Misha, they wouldn't say Misha. They could, but they would be more likely to say Mish, right? You're trying to get his attention. You're calling out to him, Mish. Often they'll repeat and they'll say Mish, Amish, Mish, Amish, right? It's just kind of a standard little formula for getting someone's attention. Okay, so if you look here at the column, this little exercise, we can try to pick out which match the short form to the long form. And of course, they're going to resemble each other usually. It's not too hard to guess as long as you're familiar with the Russian names in the first place. So let's see, Anya, pause the video if you like and guess. Anya is going to relate to Anna, right? Anya is the short form of Anna. Nadia is Nadyezhda. Lyuba is the short form of Lyubov. Natasha is for Natalia. Dasha is for Daria. Lisa is for Lizaveta. Lena matches up with Yelena. Ira, Irina. Nastya, Anastasia. Yulia goes with Yulia, right? 3 syllables. That one, it's hard to almost hear the difference sometimes. Katya, Yekaterina, Tanya, Tatiana. Now some men's names, and again, note how the short forms are all taking feminine endings. Andrusha, and by the way, that would mean that if we say I see Andrusha, we would say Я вижу Andrushu, right? Ooh, right? So again, these are taking feminine endings, even though they refer to men. Andrusha corresponds to Andrei, Borya to Boris, Volodya to Vladimir, Dima to Dmitry, Pasha to Pavel, Sasha to Alexander. Okay, by the way, Sasha also could refer to a woman. It could also be the short form of Alexandra, right? Alexandra. So you can see, right, meet women or men named Sasha in the short form. Seryoja goes with Sergei, Alyosha with Alexei, Vasya is from Vasily, Grisha goes with Grigory, Kostya with Konstantin, and Yura with Yuri. Okay, let's practice calling out a few of these names. Again, basically, we just want to drop the ah vowel. Now, keep in mind that may leave us with a soft consonant at the end. So Anya, if we call out to Anya, we'd say Any, Any, right? Natasha would be Natash. Dasha would be Dash. So this is pretty easy. Ira would be Ir. Yulia would be Yul. Katya, Kat. Dima, dim, Pasha, pash, Borya, bor, with a soft R. Seryozha would be Seryosh, Vaisya would be Vais, and Yura, Yur. Okay, so that's again fairly common, and I feel like those forms they don't seem to be mentioned too often in textbooks and the like. So anyway, okay, so let's practice declining these. And again, the only trick is to remember they're all feminine. They're all taking feminine endings, I should say, even though some of them refer to men. And of course, as we would still say that the male names are masculine. They simply take feminine endings, right? So we would say, for example, Misha Bill, Misha meaning Mikhail Bill. But again, in terms of the endings we're adding, they're all going to be feminine, right? So let's invite Misha. That would be Davai priglасим Mishu, right? Accusative. I gave Misha a book. Dative. That would be Я подарил Мише книгу. 3. Do you see Misha? Where is he? Ты видишь Мишу? Где он? 4. Misha and I, literally we with Misha, went to the theater. Мы с Мишей ходили в театр. 5. Misha has a new car. У Миши, genitive, есть новая машина. Okay, Masha, this would be a woman's name, right? So this is going to be feminine across the board, obviously, right? Feminine endings and also feminine verbs. This is feminine. Ты знаешь Mashu, right? Do you know Masha? I have a hard time talking with Masha. Мне трудно разговаривать с Машей. 8. We helped Masha move a table, right? Drag it across the room or whatever, from one place to another. Мы помогли Маше перетащить стол, right? Помогать takes the dative. 9. I received a letter from Masha. Genitive. Я получила письмо от Маши. 10, sorry. Let's go see Masha. Ka takes the dative. Пойдем к Маше. Okay, a few final notes on names. These short form names we just learned also typically have a standard diminutive form that will usually end in enka, right? Now those would be used usually for children, or maybe you're in some kind of romantic relationship and you're being very sweet to someone, right? So it would be rather unusual to use these just for friends, right? Although who knows, it could be possible, I guess. Why not? But here they are, right? Mikhail gives Misha, and then from that we get a truly diminutive form Mishenka, right? Or Maria, Masha, Mashenka, right? By the way, the short forms we just learned, sometimes you may hear them called diminutive, but there's nothing really diminutive about them. That's why I prefer to call them just simply short forms, even though sometimes they're not necessarily that short, right? But just short, familiar forms. And then again, from those we can get diminutives. One final note, so just listen for those. And again, they're pretty easy to spot. One final note is there are such things in Russian as augmentatives, meaning, right, it's kind of the opposite of diminutives, which make things small, refer to small things. Augmentatives refer to big things, right, something large or intense. And these will end either in isha for masculine and neuter, or isha, right, for feminine. And note that nouns in isha will be either masculine or neuter to agree with the gender of the original noun, right? So that's a bit weird because we can end up with masculine nouns ending in a ye, right? Like Gorodisha is a big city, and that's masculine. Druzhisha is a good friend, right? Kind of intense friendship, my big buddy or whatever. Also masculine. Mujik, mujichisha, kind of like a big peasant, literally. Mujik is like a peasant man, kind of down to an earthy guy or whatever. So mujichisha is kind of like in English, a real man, whatever that means. Okay, nagat, now some feminines. Najisha would mean a big foot. We'll see that, by the way, in Crime and Punishment when we get to it. A character is described as having big feet. Ruchisha is a big hand. Skuchisha is intense skuka, right? Intense boredom, right? So you could be speaking of a class and say skuchisha, right? Meaning it's really boring. A real snooze fest, right? Жара, жарище, right, intense heat, and чудо, чудовище. Chuda, that's kind of a funny word there. Chuda means miracle or something wondrous, right? Something really strange or miraculous or wondrous. And a chudovish means a monster, right? Some kind of monstrous or wondrous creature. Okay, so that's it for today. As usual, not a whole lot of grammar in this chapter, just more kind of practical stuff. So until next time, до свидания.